On today's Your Money, we're joined by personal finance author David Bach. He's here today to talk about his latest book, Fight for Your Money. You outlined some Fight for Your Money rules. They're not really ranked or prioritized, but I'm curious, talk about some of the more important ones that we should be aware of.
Well, they're really basic rules that our grandparents taught us. Like simple things, like if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. And yet you look at things like the Bernie Madoff scandal, where people have potentially lost $50 billion, and you say, well, how did that happen? You know, it was too good to be true. Reading the fine print, one of the single things that rips us off the most, and this happens on everything, our mortgage, our car loans, when we buy a home, that home warranty, the insurance policy we sign up for. If we don't read the fine print before we sign our name, this is where we get in trouble. So we gave you all these rules, like, look, that really are a back to basics philosophy. My grandmother grew up in the Depression, and she had all these basic rules. You know, if you don't have cash, you can't afford to buy it. You know,
right.
My handshake is my bond, but I also want your signature. You know, she had all these real rules that today still apply. And so with Fight for Your Money, it was back to basics for people. Here's your battle plan, if you will, for this current difficult economy.
Do you think people lose sight of some of those basics just when times are good and maybe we're more vulnerable now?
We completely lose sight of it. The other day, Warren Buffett was quoted as saying, you know, it's time for us to have an honest to goodness 10% down payment. You know, when I went to buy my first home, my grandmother said, you know, you should have a 25% down payment. And I put down 10%. I remember her saying to me, how can you buy a home with 10% down, David? We could never do that when we were your age. So I think when you look at what's gone wrong in this country with the leverage, with borrowing money we don't have, with buying things that we can't afford.
Right.
Our grandparents didn't do that after the Depression because they learned through very difficult times that you had to have the cash to buy it. And I think we are really going through a back to basics time, which will ultimately be good for the country. When you look at what's happening positively right now, we are saving more money than we have in 10 years as a nation, and we are spending less. Unfortunately, that leads to a longer recession, but ultimately for the American family, it will be healthier.